So the Tesla stock price is plummeting right now. We all can see that, but have the fundamentals really changed, even if Elon is a little bit distracted from Twitter? So does Tesla really need Elon Musk at this point? I've invited today the Tesla Economist on this channel. So Lee, maybe you tell our audience what you do a little bit for the people who don't know you. Please, you can take the mic and just start who you are and what you do.
Welcome to Tesla Fix.
Sure. I like to just study the fundamentals a lot and see the finances, check out the industry, see what's really happening. Obviously, the margins, the competition, and just generally make sure every area of my investment is okay. You know, it's going to go well. Trying to be objective as much as possible, not just looking for confirmation bias, but really checking out the competition, really making sure the finances are there, the demand, the supply, the production, the components, the batteries, the materials, all the way down to the actual elements in the ground. So basically making sure this investment is as safe as it can be and going the way we hope.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. What I've realized on your channel, which really astonished me, is that you really try to be as neutral as possible and just focus on the numbers. And your predictions are very interesting to see because they hit the nail on the head most of the times. Like I've witnessed, sometimes you're a little bit off with your predictions, but that's nothing you won't disclose, which is very interesting how open you are with everything. And I really like that. And yeah, that's why I'm also a huge fan of your channel in that regard.
Thanks.
And I also like how you focus on the right things, because like battery production is a huge deal at Tesla right now, especially with the Cybertruck now, and also with the Semi as well, because now the 4680s aren't in the Tesla Semi like we've thought a long time. Maybe you have some facts about the battery production that might interest our audience, because I think this is a huge topic that we have to discuss, because all the Twitter drama and everything around it is great and all, and maybe has an impact on the Tesla stock. I believe that also. But yeah, maybe we look at the fundamentals first and try to look at that. Yeah,
I mean, you can summarize the Twitter drama, basically the fact that Elon's been selling shares, which have been hurting the stock price, obviously, to cover Twitter. And then the whole side of him essentially isolating potentially some of the target market and demand reducing as a result, and it becoming too political a statement to own a Tesla. But I would say that if that's the case, that would eventually pass, and I hope so at least. And it's probably over dramatized in a sense, and it's probably more of the far left that are having this issue, and put most people in the center probably are fine with it, more so. And obviously the selling should hopefully stop. I'm not sure what happened today. Maybe he sold some more, as that was quite a hit we took. But, you know, obviously there's only so much he needs to sell, hopefully. And I would say Twitter should eventually be profitable. It shouldn't be too hard a business to turn around. There was so much extra cost there that was, I don't know how you can run spending something like $1.5 billion just on R&D for a website is just beyond me. A year, let alone all the other costs associated. Anyway, but yeah, that Twitter is not the fundamentals of Tesla. That's just a sideshow right now that's distracting everyone. So basically, like you're saying, the batteries really, and you're talking about the semi-trucks. So that's not using 4680s, it's going to use the 2170s. And we have the 2170 factory in Giga Nevada, which is about 35, maybe 40 gigawatt hours a year, which when you factor in, if it's about a megawatt hour per semi-truck, then you've got about 35-ish, 40,000 semi-trucks a year, or enough battery supply there. But then that's all the 2170 cells in the US gone, which means none left for Model Y long range or Model 3 long range in the US, but they have cancelled the Model 3 long range in the US temporarily. You can no longer order it. So that's part of that. And of course, we have the new Model Y factory in Texas that will be using 4680s. So perhaps there'll be no 2170s in Fremont anymore, and they will revert to a new battery. But what battery? So there is this new factory in CATL that CATL are making in just about 2 hours south of Giga Shanghai, which we think is possibly going to be the new M3P cells. You know much about those?
Not really. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit, because all the battery tech is getting more and more confusing as time progresses because we have so many technologies right now. Maybe some of the audience don't know, so I would love to hear something about it.
So it's well, obviously most people should hopefully know what an LFP cell means. And then you've got the ternary cells, which are ternary is 3. So you've got 3 different elements in there: nickel, manganese, cobalt, or aluminium, a combination of. But usually, and however, we have these new M3P cells that CATL are creating, which are a hybrid, more I would call it. Some people are saying it's LMFP, but it's not. It's a hybrid of a ternary cell with a LFP cell, and they've managed to create a little bit more efficiency out of them for about the same cost. So they have higher energy density. In other words, you get slightly more range, able to get slightly more range, and it's not an extra cost. So this is great. This is a great evolutionary step. And on top of that, they have this Chilean battery that they've created, which is also a structural battery pack. The structure isn't actually the cells. It is the cooling system that is being used as the structure. So there's no additional structure required there, thus reducing weight, maybe 200 pounds or so. And as it's a structured battery pack, it could then go into the front and rear die the castings for a Tesla. Now, if that is what they've created there, and supposedly that factory is for Tesla and has an 80 gigawatt hour a year capacity. On top of that, though, we also have this new Megapack factory in California that they have, and that has a 40 gigawatt hour capacity there. So we would want these cells to come from somewhere too. So my theory is that the 2170s are now going to be earmarked for the semi-truck. Then this new factory with the MP3 cells will be used for Fremont, perhaps producing Model Y and Model 3. And Model 3s maybe have a mid-range version now that would qualify for the tax credit and would perhaps be about maybe just over 300 miles of range, but 10% more than the current rear-wheel drive ones. And maybe you can get a Model Y of about 260 miles of range for kind of, again, sort of mid-range version in the US there. Or perhaps they stop the Model Y in Fremont and just concentrate on the Texas one. And then Fremont becomes this new mid-range Model 3 with 300 miles with front and rear castings and a structural battery pack, which would reduce the costs dramatically. So you'd probably save, I don't know, $3,000 to $5,000, which you could pass on to the consumer. But of course, they're saving $7,500 perhaps on the tax credit already. So they might end up raising prices and increasing margins there a lot, possibly. Also, it's going to be an easier manufacturing process with the front and rear castings. And you can see that just in the contrast between the Model 3 factory and the Model Y factory in Shanghai. The Model 3 factory is about 25% larger, I think, and it produces almost half as many yield as the Model Y factory. Model Y being a larger car, yet still creates almost twice as many just due to this rear casting and other manufacturing processes, quite likely. So if they do that to the Model 3, a smaller car with front and rear castings and structural battery packs, then perhaps you might expect maybe 1 million Model 3s a year with 60-ish kilowatt hour cells, maybe a little bit higher, due to getting this higher range and the higher energy density, which would be, again, 60, 70 gigawatt hours a year capacity. And this new factory is supposedly have 80 gigawatt hours. So I think it would be a rearrangement of how the cells are distributed along, because Elon said, currently he has this Baskin-Robbins kind of scenario with 31 different flavors, but they're limited by cells in batteries. So Elon says, we'll just take anything you can get. All battery producers, all cell producers who can just make them, please make more for us, and we will buy everything you can make because, we'll just work out a way. Yeah. We'll make a battery pack somehow, and we want it. Even them talking about BYD Blade batteries being used in Germany. Yeah,
that's what I wanted to ask next. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure they're actually using them yet, but supposedly, and again, BYD is a structural battery pack too, but they are using the cell as the structure. So, and on Battery Day, like Elon even said, going forwards, this is the only way. Structural battery packs are the future, and that is if you want to compete in EVs, that is the way to go. It's not likely they want to go backwards. So, only looking at structural battery packs really from now on, and front and rear castings as well. So, anyway, that's how that would be a tidy way of all the batteries somewhat working in there. I don't know if they even need the BYD Blade ones. I don't know how many they'd even have available to them. Yeah. BYD seem to be ramping up quite a bit themselves, so might want to keep their own batteries themselves for that. So yeah, I think that would be a tidier solution. You can probably we've seen this massive, huge ramp up in Shanghai last quarter, and they've increased production 30% there, which is crazy. And it makes you think, then if that's what they can do with just the rear casting or whatever, then what are they going to do with front and rear castings and new battery and new all these other new techniques, the structural battery pack, like at Texas? So we might expect that. I mean, if they can do 800,000 or so a year just in the Model Y factory in Shanghai, then I mean, is it not really too crazy to assume 1 million a year in Berlin or Texas for Model Ys with these new manufacturing techniques and the 4680 cells? I don't think so. So those factories, they should get to 1 million or so, and probably even higher over the years. And I don't know how long it would take them to reach that rate. It's taken 2 years for the Model Y Shanghai to reach that rate, and there's new techniques happening, and they're bringing over these people from Shanghai, these engineers, to try and work on Fremont and improve the lines there, along with all these other engineers. They think that they can improve the efficiency there, and and they've done a great job in Shanghai. So it makes sense to see what they can do and try and refine the processes there. But at the end of the day, it does come down to the cell supply as well. So we have this CATL factory, which is huge. It's a really big factory. I think the capacity might even be more than 80 gigawatt hours. Then, of course, we have the 4680 lines. You've seen the pictures?
Yeah, I've the pictures. Yeah. I've seen. Yeah, it's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have the 4680 line. There's 4 lines in in Texas, supposedly 25 gigawatt hour capacity annually, each of them, which comes to 100 gigawatt hours a year. If that is a lot of cells for 4680 to go into Model Ys and potentially Cybertrucks. But the thing is, the profit you make on a 4680 cell, due to its energy density and how much more efficient it's going to be, and the fact it's going into a Model Y long range, not a standard range, the profit per cell is probably at least twice as much as it would be for an LFP cell. So although the capacity 100 gigawatt hours is double what we currently have for Tesla, the profits are going to be twice as much per kilowatt hour there. And then on top of that, you have the whole operating leverage side of things as well. So you end up getting maybe 3 or 4 times more actual operating profit per kilowatt hour, which really starts to make a difference in the financials. And with the current stock price, when you factor that in, you start getting to, if the stock price hadn't changed and Tesla hit 100 gigawatt hours a year run rate just in Texas, then you start looking at like P ratios of 5 or something. It's ridiculous. So then on top of that, if they had this factory if these MVP cells, they might even be 4680 for all we know. We're not entirely sure.
Okay.
If they are, then it would be great. But even if they're not, they can still perhaps have a structural battery pack 4680 version in Fremont too, because there is the Cato Road facility there creating that 10 gigawatt hours a year run rate. Last we heard, there were about 40% run rate capacity there, about 4 gigawatt hours a year, which is something. It's 40%. That's not bad. If we can transfer that over to Giga Texas and see 40% there, that would be 40 gigawatt hours a year, 4680s, which would be brilliant. I mean, we don't need to hit that sort of level until the Cybertruck is really starts to ramp up.
Yeah.
So we've got time, and that's what it's about. And then, of course, the Cybertruck. I mean, the profit per kilowatt hour in that vehicle is probably going to be even higher again than the Model Y would expect. And I think people want this quad motor coming out, or this tri-motor, perhaps maybe even with 500 miles of range, and they think it's necessary for towing and stuff. But I think that it would take up too much battery supply, really, if you wanted to. It's probably going to have to layer as well, be 2 layers of cells, because the batteries aren't efficient enough yet.
Okay,
so I can't see that happening. I would imagine first it would be the dual motor to be launched, in my opinion, maybe even the single motor, but probably dual motor, and expecting more like 300 to mid 300s of range, miles of range, and possibly a price point around $70,000 to $75,000.
So,
which would be pretty profitable.
Yeah. I wanted to ask something there, because now we've seen that it was we already knew that beforehand, but that the Semi didn't use 4680 batteries in that regard. And at first it was expected that they use the 4680s for the Cybertruck and the Semi in the higher category. So how do you see the implementation of the 4680s? When do you see that, or maybe you can give a soft prediction when you think that it gets more and more realistic that they might be going with that, or even if they can reach their goals of the, like they said in the battery investor day, in the battery day, if they can reach these efficiency numbers that they were targeting.
I mean, it makes sense to use 2170s right now because they are more efficient, energy dense than the 4680s due to the fact they have silicon in the anodes, which increase the efficiency somewhat. I mean, they can put silicon in the anodes of the 4680s eventually, and they will be more efficient than the current 2170s. But perhaps the manufacturing isn't quite there yet, and they just need to get the production line working and making 4680s first, and then they can refine the chemistry from there and start altering it. But also on top of that, one of the advantages of the 4680 is the fact that they've been designed around as a structural battery pack to be used in a structural battery pack cell to vehicle. But 2170s haven't, and how much really you're going to save £200-300 of a structural battery pack is in the scheme of things of a semi truck when you got £82,000 total. It's negligible difference compared to say a Model Y.
That's true.
So 2170s are the better sell for it, and they've achieved the 500-mile target anyway. That was it. That's amazing that people said it wasn't possible, and they did it. And on top of that, there's going to be the 300-mile range version coming out eventually as well. So 2170 is sufficient for that. And otherwise, you left with this factory making these 2170 cells, which otherwise they're not going to make they're not going to be profitable enough in the Model 3s to get the price points we want to low enough prices to get the demand for the quantity that they can produce. So, I mean, eventually you should be able to hopefully get a Model 3 for $35,000 or something, easily after a tax credit anyway, if that's eligible for it. So, I mean, if there's a $35,000 Model 3 in the US and it's got 300 miles of range, I mean, just think how many of those would sell.
Yeah, like hotcakes, I would assume.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that might be true. Yeah, of course. This makes a lot of sense. I really hope that the Cybertruck will be released soon because I've ordered one. But let's see how the German or European regulations view the Cybertruck. Maybe they will produce a different version for the European market, maybe a smaller one. Maybe Hans Holzhausen also hinted at a new project. I don't know. And there were some rumors on a smaller Cybertruck in the back with 2 doors, and all speculations aside. But how do you see the roadmap? What was your analysis on the roadmap of the Cybertruck? Because many people are anticipating the mass production of that. No new news came up really much over the years, but we now have had some pictures about the rear casting, which was pretty astonishing to see how it's built up. And maybe you can tell us your take on the Cybertruck roadmap.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hold your breath on the Cybertruck for Europe anytime soon. Same for me in New Zealand. I think I've got a better chance of moving over to the US and getting one sooner and winning the green card lottery or something.
Yeah.
So there's just going to be so much demand in the US for that car. I think.
Of course, yeah.
You've got almost 1 million F-150s a year selling, and this is also and pickups are huge in some parts of the States. But not only that, this isn't just for pickup owners. This is just like people who never even considered wanting a pickup in the past, but they want the Cybertruck because it's just a whole different thing. It's like the future vehicles and can do all these amazing things. And the price, the initial advertised price was pretty good value and decent range as well, and incredible performance. I mean, it's a lot of car. It's just amazing, and it looks so cool, right? And can do all these other things. But we haven't heard really any new features since the initial launch or the time we revealed it. Except recently in the semi-truck, the fact that it will be able to use the V4 charger, so can potentially be charged a lot faster, which we're not, Elon made it out like that was a big deal. We don't know as to what extent, how fast it necessarily will charge or how much it can handle, but if it can charge like 70% in 5 minutes, I mean, that's almost about as long as it takes to fill up your gas at the service station, it's a big deal. So, the Cybertruck, it's just, I mean, you've got 1.5 million pre-orders already. Sure, a lot of those people may not want to order, but that's just pre-orders before people have even seen it or know the specifications. When you start seeing it driving around, apparently the people I talk to who have seen it just say it's like 10 times more amazing in real life. Okay. It's like real life CGI and stuff, they say, yeah. So yeah, it's gonna sell and sell and sell, and they can. Elon's saying they'll get to a run rate of around 250,000 by the end of next year, and we don't know the capacity of that factory, of what it will be. It might be 500,000, it might be 1,000,000, but there's no paint shop for a start, which is quite a major thing. And it's been designed around. Obviously, that car has been designed around manufacturing to such an extent, and still managed to look like how it's a very it's a lot of people's initial thoughts when they saw it. I think they are coming around and realizing like how cool it does look, and it was a very polarizing design to start with, but a lot of people have changed their minds, and they decided to order eventually. I thought it was pretty amazing the first time I saw it, really. But seeing it in person would be a big difference, and sales they'll just continue, and people will love that car, and it costs much less to run than an F-150. F-150s must cost a fortune to run, especially if gas prices get higher. So yeah, I mean, there's all the economic advantages of owning a lower cost running pickup truck.
I think it's going to be amazing for the US market. Sadly, like you said, I also like it's wishful thinking that it's going to be coming to Europe anytime soon, because like you said, the demand is really high. And what my thesis a little bit is, because I'm from the media space more, I would say that the Cybertruck will be a legendary vehicle in the sense of collector's item, and I think also that the pop culture will like jump on that thing as fast as possible. In every rap video, we're going to see that. And it's going to have a huge impact in the pop culture, I think. Just like the DMC, the DeLorean, like in the past, is also gained popularity after its peak, more or less, because they didn't sold so well at the time. But afterwards, the demand was very high, and that's why the DMC also is today very like a collector's car. Really.
Thanks to Back to the Future.
Yeah,
partly,
of course,
right?
of course. Yeah, of course.
The car was amazing. I loved that car, but I mean, it was terrible though. I mean, it was so unreliable. It wouldn't even start a lot of them, and the performance didn't turn out to be anything like it was. But that whole stainless steel thing as well, like just like the Cybertruck, it does. Because John DeLorean would say, "Oh, as soon as a car comes off the line, it starts dying, because it's decaying of rust eventually." So he wanted something that would last and last. I mean, I love the DeLorean. I thought it could have been cool, but he had to get it manufactured in Ireland of all places, because manufacturer was giving major subsidies there, and he just had to cut costs in every way, and it just didn't work out well. But it could have been good. He was a credible person. He was high up in GM and knew what he was doing. He knew the business. But it looks like Elon should hopefully get this right. And the popularity behind the Cybertruck is just crazy. But if Germany or I mean, it probably would be Berlin, if anywhere, if they started making one there, I mean, I would have to be smaller, I'd say, for European roads. It just wouldn't really work otherwise. And a smaller version would be cool. But maybe they have priorities first. I don't know. I'm not sure where that would. I think you need a Model 3 factory there. And you've seen that they are starting. They've taken down the trees and getting ready for what looks like a new massive factory in Berlin already. Yeah, that could potentially be the Model 3.
Yeah, that's a good strategy that they did, because the approval, as we know in Germany, is very stiff. You could say it's hard to get something through. That's why it's smart for them to plan the expansions ahead of time, to just poke the bureaucracy right before, even if it's just on the drawing board. It's much more sensible to do that in Germany and build it out with pre-approvals. So they try to start it earlier, and it makes sense, because the European market also can take a lot of cars as well, because they want to replace like gasoline cars. That's why they have a huge market also in Europe, and this makes absolutely sense to expand already. And also because the regulations and like you've seen, the environmental groups will always poke the bear, and so it's a good move.
A lot of red tape to get around. So starting earlier, I mean, maybe it's going to be 18, 24 months until it's complete or something, by which stage there should be more cells available. And if they can get this Model 3 or the Model 3 Highlander, I guess is what we're really talking about here, with front and rear casting, structural battery pack, then you've got low cost manufacturing vehicle that, and obviously in Germany, you've got higher gas prices than say the US. So the relative cost of ownership of that Model 3 for Europe is going to be even more affordable than in the US. It would be, I mean, it would sell. I mean, there's, they're wanting this hatchback version as well, of course, a compact or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think that Tesla need this $30,000 vehicle, or some people are saying 30,000, to generate the demand. But like we just said, like how well would a 35,000 Model 3 sell, or a 35,000 euro Model 3 sell? It would you know, it wouldn't have a problem for a long time. You just think of the cost of ownership and comparatively, like look what you get for a BMW or a Mercedes, And I would say that Tesla is up there with the refinement and luxury. Perhaps not so much opulence, but they don't matter as much. It's a safer car. It's safer than a Mercedes. So
That's true.
It's good value. In New Zealand, like my Model 3 Performance was 100,000 New Zealand dollars. The BMW M3, perhaps you might compare it to that, is I think $175,000 here. It was almost half the price. There was no subsidy with my Model 3. That was just like for like. And what's an M3 these days? About 0 to 100 in 4.2 seconds or something, probably. And I'm 0 to 100 in 3.2 seconds or 3.3 seconds. So it's a lot quicker. And my range isn't too far dissimilar to an M3 either. It handles better, I'd say. It's four-wheel drive. I guess M3s are all-wheel drive now as well, I think. But the lower center of gravity it obviously makes a difference with the batteries down there. I've had an M3. I used to own one, and I loved that car. But it's not comparable in my opinion to this Model 3 Performance. And like I'm saying, it's almost half the price. So I think the Europeans, the Mercedes, the Audis, the BMWs, the Tesla is just destroying them, for value for money. Then that's just the initial purchase price. And when you start adding the features that come standard in a Tesla onto a BMW, you add another $10,000, $20,000 for what they have. And you don't even have autopilot. You've just got
that's
radar cruise control, basically.
Thing. Yeah,
exactly. And let alone full self-driving, or the capability of that will never come in this car. It doesn't have the software and hardware for it. So that's it. I mean, I think they're in trouble in that sense. Porsche has this, they all have great brand names, right? People can buy them for the brand, and not everyone wants a Tesla necessarily, and not everyone may want FSD. So I think, I don't know if you know, but Mercedes seem to be going pretty hard out in their EV future. They're talking about having 200 gigawatt hours a year capacity of batteries and cells, which I think is higher than anyone else, any other legacy company. I think.
And this might be true. Yeah.
And you've probably seen the EQSs, EQAs, EQCs. They're not great. They're just kind of like an electrified version of the current ones.
Yeah, that's their strategy right now. I have to add something there, because this topic is also in my field very much. It's a great transition to the German market now, because it's crazy to see how German legacy autos problems like unfold now. I mean, they always push their goals further and further. And you could also see that Audi, for example, says now, the full self-driving thing, maybe 2030, something like that. They always push the schedule away, because Germany has huge problems with software development. You can really see that now unfold more and more. And even if you pay like 10,000 programmers, like in the CARIADs, I don't know if it was 10,000 or 8,000 or something like that, a ridiculously high number of developers for doing that. And like you said, the German brands are strong brands, Porsche and VW and Mercedes and everything, big brands that are known all around the world. But the problem was, like every other legacy auto company, they also just outsourced everything. And even software, they did it. And they split it into different parts. Also Ford did that as well. Like, this company will do the navigation system. This company will do the infotainment system. This company will do the control of the wipers, for example. And now you have a huge mess of putting everything together in software. If you want to compete with Tesla, where you develop in-house everything, more or less, is too hard to beat. And I also think the German legacy auto companies, especially Mercedes, weren't making a secret out of this, but a friend of mine who works very near to development of Mercedes, he said that they really want to focus on the luxury segment. They scrapped all the projects with the smaller Mercedes cars, for example. All the German auto makers, even VW, want to focus more on the luxury segment. It looks like they want to, especially VW, want to pursue the plan of the secret master plan from 2007, like produce a a very expensive vehicle that subsidize the smaller ones. They're like at step 0, and they would just want to focus on the luxury segment. But the problem is it so luxurious if the software is bullshit? To say it bluntly, interesting stuff. Maybe you can tell also a little bit about your view on the German auto.
I mean,
sector.
I think they have brands that people will pay more for compared to, say, Toyota or so. You know, but the battery cost for a Toyota is going to be the same as a battery cost for a Mercedes, whereas the engines, obviously, in a Mercedes is much superior and it costs more. But so it's a fixed cost. It's like a hurdle. And if you don't have a brand that is this valuable and the battery costs this much, then you can't get over there for profit. Whereas Mercedes have a brand up here and the battery cost comes in here, so there is room for some profit, right? Whereas the smaller brands, maybe Volkswagen's probably under that as well. So that means also you probably noticed that it's Mercedes with the EQA, EQB even maybe now, EQC, EQE, and an EQS and the EQS SUV coming as well. So these are all a lot of SUVs they have there. Whereas they're going for every single size of SUV all the way to get all the price points. Whereas Tesla just have their Model Y, the Model X as well, of course, but mainly it's the Model Y. So, but Mercedes are making small quantities of each of these. They're limited by cell supply, and there's volume production stuff to hit, right? So, but these are high-end vehicles that are costing a lot of money, enough to cover the cost of the battery, and hopefully eventually when they hit economies of scale, there might be some profit there too. But the other brands, they can't get to that level. And like you're saying, they're starting with the high-end luxury ones, and the EQS is a ridiculous amount of money. It's also not even as nice as a typical S-Class ICE car, in my opinion. I mean, an S-Class, why is it not as nice as an S-Class? I have no idea why. So
that's true.
S-Classes, they're pretty fantastic, right?
Yeah.
It's an amazing car.
The build quality and everything.
And you've probably seen, is it the BMW, is it L7, the electric, i7, sorry.
i7,
yeah. It has like I think is it 32-inch TV in the back, and things like that, right? So,
and sorry, I have to say something. I've seen videos from BMW, and you can see the lag in the software when he clicks, and that's something that this kind of usability is grinding my gears so much as a perfectionist in software development, because I focus more on the software because it's and I mean the build quality is all great. I great stitching on the seats and everything. The Germans are very good at perfecting the interior. It really, you can say that they're good in that, but I mean, the EQS is, for me, looks like a hookah bar where you can smoke, and with the LEDs and everything, it's a little bit too much for me personally, but I get the point why people like the interior of German cars, especially also the Porsche Taycan, for example, is also not really comparable to the Model S. But for me, it's the whole package at Tesla is a little bit more on point because it's more about the software, in my opinion. But please go on. I didn't want to interrupt as much.
Well, I mean, like 90% of the cars I've ever owned have been German. I like German cars. For these reasons, they make great cars, great engineering, the ride quality is great, the handling's brilliant, the refinement inside, the safety, they're brilliant cars. Tesla just better than I'm a car person, an avid enthusiast, right? But Tesla just destroy them in every way, pretty much. They don't have as many buttons and things and all these things that people are used to, but you just get over it and you move on. Like it's like having your Blackberry with all the buttons.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Now you have an iPhone instead. It's like it takes a while for some people to get over this old stuff, and they miss the smell of the car or of the fuel, and they miss the noise of the engine. It's like, no, that's old technology. You just move on with the future now and just get over that. You will eventually, but it takes some people a lot longer than others. So yeah, and Porsche is, so you probably heard like Porsche trying to float publicly out of Volkswagen.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what the current situation is there, how far they got. But
I'm
I
not
think
sure either.
My opinion on that,
it's still in discussion. I think they try to get away from the plummeting brand of VW.
With an IPO, it was a ridiculous IPO. I don't know, like $70-80 billion or something. I can't
ridiculous.
recall. I probably get that now in this economy. But so my theory was on that is that Porsche has this brand that is people are obviously willing to pay more for over a Tesla even. and they have a chance that they can make a huge profit on battery cars, because of that. And the Taycan was a great example, like how much more expensive it was than a Tesla, yet still the range was almost half what you get. The performance isn't even close to a Plaid now.
Yeah.
Okay, sure, it was up there with ludicrous, but now the Plaid just destroyed that. Then, in my opinion, you've got this difference but people get confused over the difference between opulence and luxury. And people say,
that's a good
Porsche's
point.
more luxurious and stuff. But no, it's more opulent. It has some special leather from some special cow in Norway or something, that it's that much.
That's
whatever.
true.
Like, who cares?
Yeah.
It's
There's a distinction.
So that's not luxury. So luxury is things like, the car driving itself, right? That's luxurious. And like, you can close the doors with a button, and the Tesla Model S will open and close the doors and things like that.
Or the convenience with the usability. You walk to the car, it opens the doors automatically, for example, and stuff like that. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Like that's luxury. A HEPA filter to keep you healthy in the car, that kind of luxury is more important. A massive TV where you can watch Netflix or YouTube or whatever in the front and the back with a, like you're saying, the software again, how responsive it is. And like I drove the BMW iX and I tested out the software and stuff. And it's gotten better than it used to be, but there's still a lag there. And also the quality of the screen, and they've made it, you've probably seen it's really, really wide. But not very high. So your actual viewing dimension is only, if you wanted to watch Netflix, it would probably be not that large.
I've seen that.
To
that's crazy.
The wide screen of a Tesla.
Yeah.
And obviously you can't get an overall update that will suddenly allow you to watch Netflix on it anyway, or anything like that. It's like they are trying to, they can't do proper battery electric cars. They can't get this range. They can't get this performance. They can't do all this efficiency like Tesla have. So instead they have to try and convince the consumer other ways of how electric they are with big screens and lots of lights and everything like that people is kind of synonymous with
more buttons,
electricity and buttons and stuff and air vents and door handles and things,
Yeah.
So I think like less is more in refinement as well. All these buttons, and people are like, oh no, you've got the button, and like the BMW buttons like look like they're made out of crystal and all this sort of stuff. But no button is still better. And the BMW iX, it had this button where you can change the roof, the glass roof goes from translucent to transparent as well. They're just kind of doing all these engineering features that like the Tesla aren't going to bother doing because they don't need to. They're just going for mainstream things that are actually useful to the user, to the consumer, rather than, oh, hang on, we can do this. And there's going to be consumers out there who don't want a Tesla, and they do want these specific things for some reason. Like the Porsche, if you go to and try and buy a new Porsche Taycan online, the options are just endless. Like all the different types of spoilers you can have on the car,
totally
the colors,
customizable,
the stitching. And maybe some consumers want that, and Tesla aren't going to do that. They're just going to go for the mainstream car. It's like, look, this is what you want. It comes really highly optioned as it is, but that's about it. You can't have more specifics than that. The stereos are great in them anyway, whereas you can always add more things onto these BMWs, Mercedes, and Porsches and things. But the economies of scale of Tesla just doing these things that they know, it's like, okay, so we can give people better stereo and it might cost $200 per vehicle. We'll just do that for all of them. Yeah. Whereas BMW, like, oh, we can have extra sub here, some more speakers here, and it all adds up, or a different upgrade the brand to a B&O or something, So fully customizable. And then, oh, your color. Oh, no, I have to have it this exact color. And this interior has to be, oh, and I want these types of wheels and stuff. And Tesla only offer a few versions of wheels. So you got all that variety. And then you're paying twice as much compared to a Tesla, and it's an inferior car. But Porsche, they don't need a lot of sales annually. Yeah, it's a niche in a sense. But so maybe they can still compete and have massive profits. I mean, even their ICE cars have huge margins. I think a 911 is something like 70% gross margin or something, right?
Yeah, I don't know really, but maybe you're more than an expert in that area. But I wanted to add something because this sums it up in a nutshell, I think. I've seen a review of the smaller, I think it was the iX4 or something, or how's it called?
iX3? Oh, maybe the iX4 as well now, maybe. I'm not sure.
So it was also with the Crystal, the new i series of BMW. Let's just say that. And I've seen a review because I wanted to know, how do you change the direction of the air vents? Because I knew they will solve that with a button. I'm sure about that because Tesla has this convenient touchscreen feature where it just like, oh, the air has to go there, and then it's done, and the animation is great and everything. So I thought maybe they have a digital solution because they have a touchscreen in the front. Okay, let's see. And then the reviewer goes under the dashboard a little bit. Here's a small nipple where you can like adjust, and it's very small, and like it's hidden because they wanted to do a minimalist interior as well, so they adapted a lot of that. But then there's a small, I don't know, joystick or something where you can like change the direction, and it's sort of ridiculous because they have to solve everything with a button, like you said, the button that makes the roof transparent and stuff like that. I don't really get it. It's overcomplicated. I wouldn't say it's luxurious. It's the way they did it before, and that's what they still do. I have a friend who works at a huge design firm in Germany who worked with I won't disclose the name of the brand, but a huge German car maker. They made a rebranding of their logo and everything, and the website and everything. So they made a huge redesign. They really had arguments with the internal design team of the interior. And like they said, okay, now we want to change to flat design, minimalist design. How about we just don't use 3D simulated touchscreen buttons? How about that? It's like it's not 2010 anymore. Apple also shift everybody, the whole usability. We don't have to tell our users that a 3D looking button is a button. We know that now. We are used to touchscreens. So let's just make it more cleaner interfaces. And they had a huge discussion, and they couldn't follow through there in the interior design. They couldn't do it because the the design team was too stubborn. So they have a huge problem internally in that segment, really much. That's why they always need to put buttons everywhere, because that's how they solve the problems. They need new people there, I think, the new designers who are more focused on buttons, digital.
The whole button team are like, well, if you remove the buttons, then we won't have a job anymore.
Yes.
So we need buttons. Exactly. There's a lot of conflict of legacy systems and legacy departments and stuff, and everyone wants to try and keep their job.
Of course,
So they're going to fight for it, and so that there is that conflict. But I mean, it's not just legacy. I mean, you can see the new Chinese vehicles; they still have buttons too. The BYD, it's got plenty of buttons.
That's true.
So they have it's the software. Like Tesla have got this software, like what they've done, and just automated. Like the whole thing is like the doors unlock through the software, and then you can. It goes onto the app as well. Like if right now I can just get my phone out and I can preheat or pre-cool my car to any temperature I want. By the time I get in there, it's going to be
huge
this,
in
temperature.
Winter.
I could, and of course I can set that on a timer as well. And think, okay, so Range Rover and things like that, they have in the timer you can set it in the morning, so it's this or that. But I don't think you can control it so much over the app like this. And I can do all those other things on the app as well, because it's completely, summon and things like that would be eventually working. So it's the fact that it's really more like a smart car, really, I guess. There's hardly any buttons in that car. It's all coming from this central panel, this touchscreen. And I think Rivian might have got the closest out of everyone else.
They have a great software as well. I've seen that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. They have a good team on that side, but other than that, I don't really see anyone else who's come close to the level that Tesla are at. And it saves money having all these buttons and air vents and handles and the best part is no part, obviously. So it all makes sense. And I'm people are like, oh, I got to push the button to open the glove box, whatever. It's like, yeah. So what? You get used to it, you get over it, and the benefits that it brings outweigh any downsides. And how often do you really need to use your glove box anyway?
That's true. Especially if you think about that, they can solve everything with the over-the-air update. Maybe not the display placement, but everything else. They can really change inside of the interface. For example, oh, no, that's not so convenient on that position. Oh, how about you can change it yourself, for example. That's why they implemented that feature like recently or a year ago or something. Stuff like that really makes a difference for the costs, especially because I think Tesla is from the design philosophy more in the camp of Apple, than anything else, because Apple also tries to remove everything they can as much as possible and just solve everything with software. They even go as far as they want to replace their phone with the Apple Watch, for example. Also, reduce the phone to the max, like so you don't have a phone anymore, even maybe with glasses someday. So they really look ahead and try to reduce everything as much as possible.
Yeah.
To
That's true.
Yeah, and it's the same philosophy. You see it at Tesla, like you said. Yeah,
The controversy, even when Apple's laptops, they removed the CD drives. It's like, oh no, CD drives, and then they removed all the SD card slots and everything, and it was just USB-C. That's all there was for the laptops.
Yeah.
They've been similar philosophy, right? Remove it, make it simpler. But the thing is, there's Samsung. They've got smartphones and stuff as well. Whereas no one else really has a smart car other than Tesla. It seems to be a larger barrier to entry when it comes to vehicles. And it seems like it's really hard to make a smart car, let alone one with FSD. And like no one's getting close to that. Let alone it being in a car that they can probably produce now, if they had to, maybe $17,000 or something, a car that has all the FSD capabilities compared to something like GM's Cruise car, which must cost in excess of $100,000 perhaps, of all the technology it has in there. There's a massive contrast, and it makes a massive difference in profitability at the end of the day when it will be hit level 5 FSD, and how many you can make, so much more, how many of them more you can make at such a rapid rate compared to something like a GM Cruise car, and how many more applications it can be as it costs so much less and utility-wise. It was amazing as all this technology is, the software, the hardware that Tesla come up with, which is absolutely mind-blowing. It's not even their main competitive advantage, at least in the long run. It's all going to be manufacturing and how lower cost they can get these vehicles compared to anyone else, And people think, oh, well, the Chinese are getting lower cost. Well, are they? I mean, the prices may be lower, but are the costs actually any lower? Probably about the same, only just a much more inferior car. They're making them as basic as they can because they know how manufacturing is tough. And they don't have legacy systems in their way, and they're able to do these things and try and copy Tesla as much as possible without having the whole backlash of the whole ICE department saying, hey, hang on, we still want to have jobs as well. So they're able to move it in a faster direction. But they have just stripped down these cars to make them as basic as possible so that they can be manufactured as easy as possible, similar to a Toyota compared to a BMW, so that they aren't anywhere near as nice to drive as a Tesla or as safe or anything. But also, I think that they just locked in this technology that Tesla had at this certain stage, just after around Battery Day, like BYD. They're like, oh, okay, great, structural battery packs, we'll do that. And then they're using structural battery packs. And now, as a result, the BYD Atto 3 is almost on par with range as a Model 3 rear-wheel drive, and they both have a similar battery pack size. They've caught up, some people say, to Tesla, but they didn't, in a sense, because the Model 3 rear-wheel drive isn't using a structural battery pack. So some people say, oh, well, they've actually leapt ahead of Tesla. They're ahead of Tesla in manufacturing because Tesla isn't even using the structural battery pack yet. So people think they've caught up. But I think it's basically they copied Tesla, what they could do, and locked it in, and that's it. But Tesla aren't in the they don't want to just lock in a certain technology and then rinse and repeat and repeat and repeat. They want to continually evolve. So, okay, sure, maybe the BYD is using a better version of manufacturing currently to a Tesla, but we know that Tesla can make better ones already with structural battery packs with front and rear castings, which is already, again, a level above any other Chinese manufacturer. So that puts them in the lead already. And they did briefly do that in Texas already, and we know they are capable of it when we get this 4680 ramped up. So that's something. But of course, BYD are doing this with LFP cells, which are, the thermal management on them is not as complicated as the nickel-based cells, the ternary batteries, because the energy density is much higher, which means you have more thermal issues, right? So they'll never be able to get the higher range. They'll just have this lower range, which will limit them to a sense. So I think that BYD, that they have locked in this technology. They've locked in their blade battery, and whereas Tesla, Elon's already told us that he has the next stage already after the structural battery packs and the front and rear castings to get down the cost of manufacturing to half of what the Model 3 is currently.
That
So
would be
we're looking at the
crazy.
next stage.
Yeah.
So it would be crazy. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I assume it is going to be a smaller car, like a compact car, perhaps. And I'm guessing it's probably going to look more on the lines of a Cybertruck, in a sense, because it's just going to be designed around a lower cost form of manufacturing, and less things may be as important, like perhaps the aerodynamics aren't as important as they were before, because they've got weight down and they've got the battery efficiency up more. And cost it's more about just getting them printed out of that factory as fast as possible. And, we'd expect it probably going to be twice the rate as well that they come out. So, I mean, that's what we have to look forward to. It's going to take some time, I guess, but we heard about this new design that Franz was saying is like this is the best design he's ever done in his life. And we're assuming that this is the car he's talking about, which could also be assumed it is the Robotaxi, it's the compact. Is it the same car? We'd assume perhaps it is. It makes sense. I can't see a point of Tesla selling a compact yet at around 30,000 price point, because they don't have the sales. When we said, they'd sell enough Model 3s at a $35,000 price point, which would carry more profit per vehicle. So I can't see them doing that yet. And because there isn't the cell supply. But if it is a Robotaxi, then the profit per kilowatt hour per battery sold on that, it would, it's 5 times as much, because it's used 5 times more utility with a Robotaxi compared to a car. So that is potentially what it is. But is FSD ready is the question for that by that stage. On the other hand, this car will be designed specifically as a Robotaxi, which means that everything they've learned over the last 10 years or whatever on FSD and stuff, they've now incorporated it into an actual design for a specific Robotaxi to make it that much easier for it to challenge, get through these roads and know what's happening. Like, for example, I figure the front would be shorter, so it can creep out further and still see what the cars are coming and stuff. Like that whole Chuck's turn thing, it would be easier if the car just was shorter. So a compact would be shorter. It would also weigh less, so it could brake faster. There's like the four-wheel braking system that's coming out by Brembo brakes that would mean it would stop quicker, so it wouldn't have to be as sensitive to pedestrians running out on the road, because it knows it could stop that much faster. All sorts of things like that, just designed into it as a specific Robotaxi. So perhaps it could pass through regulation faster and earlier, at least in some states, because it can show that it is designed for it better.
That vehicle is very interesting as well. I also think that they will lower the price of the Model 3 through the battery technology maybe, and then adapt also to even a smaller version. If you go sub $35,000 in Europe, that's the point where you conquer the market really fast, I think, because Europeans tend to buy like cars for like 20,000 or 25,000, around that area. If they crack this number, even with a Robotaxi based car, for example, that's something I could imagine as well, because just put a steering wheel inside again. Maybe they conceptualize that already and we don't know it. So let's see how it's happening, but this could make a lot of sense. And I also think it will have a lot of impact even if some states in geofenced areas, even that, I could imagine that in a city that is very progressive and wants to try that. I don't see that they have these problems of Waymo, for example, that we've witnessed, that the Waymo cars just stopped and just like in the middle of the road. If the world witnesses that, if the whole United States adapt robotaxis and like driverless vehicles, then Europe can decide how many years do we want to sit on the sideline and just wait, and then they will approve it someday. How do you view the robotaxi in your evaluation? The robotaxi business is really hard to project, because we hadn't that before, this kind of value in a car, because then a car is suddenly an appreciating asset. It's very crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, essentially, Robotaxi, or Tesla Robotaxi, means you've eliminated the largest cost of being driven around, which would be the driver. And then the next largest cost of being the fuel. Of course, there's also depreciation in the car, but if this has 1 million miles or so, then it's just going to go on for a long time. So it becomes almost negligible relative to taking an Uber or something, which means there's a lot of profit available there. And you start doing numbers, and there being a lot of robotaxis on the road, and then those numbers, the profit just towers over anything else really, except maybe potentials of robots and energy as well. But as far as the actual car sales are concerned, then yeah, robotaxis it's like add a zero onto the stock price pretty much. It's like a lottery ticket for stockholders.
That's true.
So yeah, but we see it progress. We see FSD, everything like that is meant to be happening. We're seeing happening. It's just taking longer than we're told, obviously. But it's incredible what some of the videos we see, people on FSD going from one destination to another, and it's happening. You can see it. It's mind blowing that it can do what it can do already. So it's only going to get better. And there is obviously Tesla know how much profit is available in robotaxis, and they know, hey, look, we just need to sort this out, and look how much money our company is worth. So let's do what we can to sort it and get it done. So yeah, that's what robotaxis are. It's like a lottery ticket, and it's looking like it's happening. Elon thinks it'll happen. Elon thinks he can do it, and apparently the regulation somewhat is also based on the liability. So if Tesla do have their own insurance and take on the liability, that should help the case as well.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's going to be massive payouts that have to be doing, but then, like I said, it's just so profitable. Anyway, but as for the fundamentals, though, is in the near term and things that are more quantifiable, I really just mainly care about cell supply, and I'm under the assumption that Tesla can still sell every car they make, as cliche as it sounds, and they have that margin buffer, so they can just reduce the prices and increase demand. And this is all the cars they make now, like only just over 50% of them even have rear castings, let alone rear and front castings and structural battery packs and lower cost cells in the future. The costs are only going to come down really for Tesla, especially relative to the competitors and ICE. So if the costs come down, then hopefully the prices would come down for the consumers too, or if not, then the margins would just get higher. Either way, it's good for the company. But obviously, if they make more, then they will need more demand, so the prices will come down. But also, like, there's that operating leverage as well they have, because their OPEX seems to maintain pretty. It's incredible how it's just been so stable with that, despite the increase in production. So the fact that then if they increase their production by they double it by 3 million units a year or something, then even if the gross margin stayed about the same, the operating margin would go from, so the gross margin might be 30%, but the operating margin might go from 20% to 25%, which it's a big jump as well. So that's like twice as many sales and about 25% more operating margin on top of that. So it makes a big difference in the financials. Economies of scale is still early in this company. Like we're at a run rate perhaps of almost 2 million a year now, and you think BMW, what, 3.5 million or something? Is it about that? 3 million maybe?
Yeah.
And that's BMW. We're going mainstream here. We're aiming for 20 million a year. And when these prices do come down, with the economies of scale, with the increased manufacturing technologies and capabilities and lower cost sales, you add all this in, eventually, it like you're saying, you hit that sweet spot, that $35,000 price points, when you're also saving maybe $2,000 a year on fuel. It's just almost anyone can afford it almost. And you're not really even competing with new car buyers now. You're starting to compete with used car buyers who were spending maybe $20,000 on a used car. And they're like, well, hang on, I've got maintenance and all this as well. And I have to go servicing it. And the engine parts are coming, I have to pay for all that. So it ends up more like $3,000 or $4,000 a year to run those. Whereas the Tesla would be a few $100s a year. And then again, obviously, possibly saving in insurance as well, like $500 a year saving on insurance on top of that. All this vertical integration of cost savings just make this car more and more affordable. And just hitting those price points, even if it's a Model 3, the Highlander might be what that target is, especially if it has 300 miles of range. I mean, they wouldn't even need to do $35,000. $40,000 is still good enough value for that car. But perhaps there'll be a lower spec version at 35,000 eventually if they wanted to. So if they really had a massive capacity of cells. And even if there was a compact coming out sometime, where's the factory? They need to build the factory. So even if it's in Shanghai, maybe they can build it in a year, but then it's got to ramp up as well. That's another year, so that's 2 years away automatically from if they started today, let alone the cell production. So I can't see I can't personally see a compact yet, and the only reason I think a compact might come out earlier than I think is perhaps they have too much LFP supply in China that they can't export the vehicles. There's not enough capacity to export enough vehicles out of there, so they have to make more cars in China, and they need a car at a lower price point, which might be this compact. But equally, the Model 3 Highlander might suffice anyway. So I can't see it happening yet. But I mean, I'm looking, and I'm happy to change my mind if I see evidence. But I think a Model 3 Highlander seems like a low-cost Tesla for now. And the Model Y is just so popular that they raised the price $18,000 since its launch in the US. I mean, that's a massive amount to raise the price, right?
Yeah.
So this is why I also think the Cybertruck is going to be more like $70,000 rather than $50,000 for the dual motor, because since then they raised the Model Y almost $20,000, and that's before they knew the Cybertruck had 1.5 million pre-orders. So I mean, people pay $75,000 to have a Cybertruck if it's dual motor one, even if it's only 300 miles. Of course they would, and more than Tesla can make for some time anyway. But yeah, a Model 3 Highlander might be what these people who are concerned about the demand is what will make them feel better, perhaps, in this sort of price point. And if it hits that $7,500 tax credit as well, then even Tesla could be selling them for $45,000, and they're still $37,500 for the consumer. I mean, that's still it makes you think. But it might even be $50,000 because it has more range. So and then it comes to $42,500 after the tax credit, and they might make 1 million of them a year. So yeah, it's about the cell supply is the constraint, really, in my opinion. So that's what I care about the most. And like I said, the Cato Road facility is supposedly about 40% production now, and there's 100 gigawatt hour capacity in Texas. So if they can get that to 40% as well, and even if at the end of the next quarter or something, it's still great. Just to see it happening is the main thing. For me, it's just like, can they do it? Like, I just want to see it happen. Even I'm happy if it takes another year, as long as it happens. It's such a big deal. And I read on an article the other day that they were expecting 75,000 Model Ys from Texas in Q1, which I thought was amazing. Like, that's above a volume production for the entire quarter over the average. And this was supposedly credible from someone with authority on the matter. That would just be amazing. I think that'd be enough for at least the fundamentals, at least even if the stock price is getting hammered by Twitter or the macro economies, that'd be enough for the astute investor to just feel confident about the company and how we can get through it all. And despite, even if the economy is bad, people do still buy cars. And Tesla have this massive margin. And if they have created this lower cost version of the vehicle, and they have more margin or more buffer, so they can reduce the price relative to what the competition are. If people are still buying cars, and if Tesla suddenly is relatively cheaper, then they can still get the demand, and it's the competitors that will hurt more, not Tesla.
Yeah.
Even if the stock price doesn't recover as a result, at least we know the company's there and it's doing what it needs to do. We just need to hang in there.
Yeah, that's true. I've talked to Ross Gerber last episode, and it's pretty interesting. He also said that even though the US seems like to be in a recession, or going towards a recession, people still buy a lot, like you said, and the demand didn't break down really. Maybe the Chinese market got a hit a little bit, but it doesn't look like that now if you see the numbers now. And he said that spending is big in the US especially. I mean, in Europe, you see more signs of a recession even than the US, for example. But
Europe's getting hurt.
Yeah, I think so. And
Europe's suffering somewhat. America's pretty solid still.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it has a lot to do with the war as well here, because it's so near. Also, that also is a factor that That's not as much hurting the US than the European markets. And I think we should be very aware if Tesla starts to produce in the style of the Cybertruck in Germany or also in China, because then this could imply that they are working on a smaller car and a competition more or less to the Model 3, because then I think they will be cannibalizing their own sales of the Model 3 if they produce a $25,000 smaller car in Europe, because I think they can still lower the prices like you've said. I also agree with that sentiment that they will get the cost down, and they will sell the Model 3 or even the Model Y maybe for a cheaper price point in Europe, and this will work for a long time until they reach the cap that the demand maybe isn't there anymore, and then they can start to shift. But then they have their
demand saturates.
Yeah, and then they have their robotaxis, and then they can just adapt the design from the robotaxi to a smaller car. Just put a wheel in that thing and pedals, and that's it.
So Elon talks about demand for the Model Y being like 3 or 4 million units a year until demand starts to saturate. So if that's at the Model Y price point. If we expect this Model 3 at a lower price point, then okay, sure, the sports utility crossover is a very popular vehicle, right? But sedans are as well in other nations. So if we get to perhaps even a $30,000 price point eventually for the Model 3, then maybe there's the combined Model 3 and Model Y sales are even approaching 10 million just for those two models. I mean, that's not. I mean, like we're saying, if there's a $30,000 Model 3, then can we expect that? I mean, or even 35,000. Especially a lot of places have subsidies. Like in New Zealand, we got $8,000 subsidy here. Australia's about to get a $10,000 subsidy for EVs. So, and even if it's just a few $1,000s here and there, whatever it is, it and then the saving on the fuel, it really starts to compete with used cars, and almost like the cost of owning a ICE car, if it was free, is almost going to be cheaper to buy a brand new Tesla.
That's true.
Because of the annual cost savings of the fuel, the maintenance, and maybe the insurance and everything like that. Plus, even the hassle of having to go and get your car serviced twice or so a year. That takes up half your day or so. It's annoying. 10 million units without even having, and include the Cybertruck in there, then perhaps we can hit 10 million without even needing a compact. Which I don't think many people think of. But true. This is what's happening. The manufacturing is getting this lower cost. Tesla used to offer a $35,000 Model 3 in the US. It was the standard range model, and the current one's standard range plus. That's why the plus is there, because there was the standard range one. It was $35,000. I don't know if it had negative gross margin or not, but I'm guessing it probably didn't. Otherwise, why would they sell it? And they stopped it, obviously, because they realized, hey, there's enough demand for the higher ones. And I guess they were just trying to be ethical, because they did say at the initial reveal of the Model 3 that it can hit $35,000. So they showed that they could.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean they can't do it again, especially with all these reduced manufacturing costs that are coming and parts that are coming. And they didn't know there was going to be a 4680 cell that they could get down to $70 a kilowatt hour then, or all these other LFP cells that are getting so much cheaper. So, I think as long as we get the cells to build the cars, everything else is Tesla have proven themselves time and time again with the manufacturing. This 30% line upgrade in Shanghai, people aren't talking about enough. This is massive, that they already had such great run rates at Shanghai, and then they just make it another 30% on both lines. I remember I was doing videos back end of last year, suggesting that Tesla could hit 1,600 Model Ys a day. Actually, it was first 1,400 and then 1,600. And people were like, no, that's too many. That sounds too good to be true. But I was like, we were counting the Model Ys coming out when they just doing these tests of running the manufacturing lines faster. It's like, well, you count them, and that's how many it is per minute, and it works out that many a day. This is happening. They're doing it, and just on these bursts and now we're at like 2,100 a day. People aren't appreciating how good their manufacturing is. And even Fremont, a retrofitted factory that was not designed for this purpose or anything, has the highest output out of any other auto factory in the entire US.
That's
So
crazy.
I mean, Texas is just going to, yeah, right. Texas is just going to go even more crazy. And then the next factory will be designed even better around, this is like Elon says, this is the product, and it's like a microchip, and he's just going to refine it and get better and better. Like TSMC, they're making chips like smaller and smaller and smaller, doing more with more and more power. This is what the factories are going to be like. They're going to get smaller and be able to have faster and faster output. That's what Elon calls the actual product for Tesla in a sense. So yeah, and then there'll be new revolutionary new designs. Like some people think that this new design is going to be the Model 3, and the fact that Elon was talking about, we can now manufacturing techniques that can reduce the Model 3, half the cost of the Model 3, may actually be this new Model 3. But I don't know. I assumed it would just be some sort of facelift, and probably I was thinking headlights that might be similar to the Roadster to give it a bit of a refresh, because lights are obviously quite a dating feature on most vehicles, and you refresh that and keep most of the body the same, because then it keeps it timeless in a sense.
Yeah.
And keeps the design, the economies of scale, having the same design and refining that. But there is a new vehicle on the way as well. I don't think that it is the Highlander. I think there is this new vehicle. I think it is going to be a compact. And I think it is going to be the Robotaxi, but I just don't know when we'll see it.
Yeah.
And we were 2019, the Cybertruck was first revealed, and here we are end of 2022, and we still don't have the Cybertruck. So we might get this new vehicle reveal, and it might still be 3 years until we even see that come out into manufacturing too.
That's true.
It would be nice to see. I mean, it's since the Cybertruck's the last time we had a vehicle revealed. That was pretty exciting. So I look forward to another vehicle reveal sometime.
Yeah. Yeah, Lee, thank you very much for all the insights. I found it very interesting, and you touched on a lot of points that were important now in the phase that the stock is so much down. Everybody sees it. Many people might be very frustrated right now, or people who have options, maybe they had some knockout certificates or something and they are out now and stuff like that. That's why many people might be frustrated. But I think if you are long in Tesla, by the way, no financial advice. I have to point that out because I'm not in any position to give financial advice. But I also see that the fundamentals haven't changed. We have all this Twitter buzz. I don't know how you view it, but I think that it's a good thing for Tesla now, especially institutional investors maybe will realize it's not tied to Elon Musk as much, because now the machine is running already. And I don't know, how do you see that?
People mentioned key man risk and everything, but Tesla's all grown up now. It's a mature company. It's not mature to it's still growing massively, but it can take care of itself. There's some amazing people, amazing talent in the right places, doing the right things. Elon says that he will stay at Tesla as long as he can continue to be useful, and he also says that he claims that he knows more about manufacturing than anyone else on the planet. I think he said manufacturing in general and not just referring to auto manufacturing, but either way, that's probably something that is quite useful. And he's really got his head around manufacturing, and because he discovered this is it.
Yeah.
This is the core element to it and how to grow. And it's not just for cars; it's obviously for the batteries as well. And then it comes to robots on top of that, all sorts of things. And we've got this new manufacturing facility in California for the Megapacks as well, which will be interesting to see how it goes. They were very coy about the launch of that. All that I saw was in the Q2 financial report there was one sentence about the fact that it's open,
true.
and that was it. There was no big headline. There was no Reuters articles saying it. And it's like, hey, this is a big deal. Maybe you should talk about this more.
Yeah.
And the fact it's a 40 gigawatt hour facility, that's not nothing. That's like the equivalent of maybe 800,000 Model 3 standard ranges a year. That's a lot. This is a serious amount. I just hope now that because they're manufacturing them properly on a production line, that the cost has dramatically decreased, and now that we can actually see some decent margins.
Yeah.
Perhaps 25% on Megapacks compared to 0% or so that we've had recently. I think we hit, was it almost 5% or 10% last quarter, which was a record. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe it's going to be up to 30% with this, and we'll see. And we don't know how quickly this is going to ramp up, this factory. But 40 gigawatt hours, there's 10 gigawatt hours a quarter, which is 10 times more than we had before. So it might be noticeable finally. And energy is obviously a good industry.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's even bigger than the car industry if you look at it, and people don't really realize. I think many people are still a little bit distracted from all the headlines still, and we also can see a lot of FUD headlines still. Oh, the demand is down. Why should they expand the factory in China then if the demand is so down?
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah. Why did they have record deliveries in November? So I'm not entirely sure that the demand is necessarily down. The supply is up, right? Because we know they just got the supply up. So and the costs should therefore be down as well. And they've passed on the cost savings to the consumer enough to go under this subsidy as well. And they had record sales in November for China, and so December is usually the biggest sales month for cars of the year, and they don't appear to be exporting many vehicles in December. So perhaps the demand is still there for China. So I think this will be a very telling quarter. Whether demand, I mean, okay, China, things aren't great in China. The economy is not great there.
Yeah,
I'll admit that. But I mean, and sure, probably demand has dropped somewhat, but by how much we don't know. And like when you lower the prices, it's like, is it demand of Tesla that's going to drop, or is it going to be the demand of BMWs that are going to drop more so? If they're getting more competitive on pricing, it's going to be relative in a sense. So and you were seeing BYD sales increase still massively. So and I wouldn't say that that's necessarily eating Tesla's market. You know, if you can afford a Tesla, then you're much wiser to buy a Tesla. It's a better valued car even than a BYD. But if you can't afford a Tesla, then there's the BYD if you just want electric. I don't know how much they're competing with each other. It's like saying, oh, Toyota, they've just increased their production by this much. Well, that means that BMW they are going to be losing sales or something. I wouldn't have thought so. Maybe there's obviously some overlap, probably, but I wouldn't. I'm not too worried about the Chinese competition. And China is probably an overrated market because although it's the biggest auto market in the world by numbers, the average selling price there is a lot lower. They can't afford spend as much on cars compared to Europe or the US. So, you know, also like the Australian demand, I think, is enough almost to consume about 20% of what they're building in China, because obviously fuel prices are actually quite high there, and there's no domestic production there, so they don't have protectionism or anything for the imports, and so and BYD, you know, they probably have a market in Australia too. Don't get me wrong, but when you've also got this $10,000 tax credit coming in Australia, they start to look pretty good value. Like my dad, they live in Australia, and they've ordered a rear-wheel drive Model Y as well. You know, it's taking a while to get there. There's still this backlog too, even in Australia. There's plenty of international demand, and I guess it's just going to come down to how much capacity there is in the ships.
That's true.
You know, we saw 55,000, I think it was, in October, which would then leave about 30,000 for domestic. So they just have to sell really 30,000 domestic in China to meet that's all the demand they need to meet the supply. But I mean, maybe they can even export more than that for all we know as well. So this will be a telling quarter when we get the CPCA figures as well from China of how much was sold there. We'll see. Was there a demand issue? Was there a demand drop in China?
Yeah, and even if it is the case, maybe we will see still a drop. But if you look at the revenues again and the growth rate of Tesla again, and if you just wait it out a little bit, because everything is already lined up, it's just execution, and they are in the pole position, I would say, in that regard. They really have everything set up to be successful for the next until 2030 at least even further than that. And I think also in times of crisis you have to look at which company has core technologies for the future. And we haven't talked about energy really, we haven't talked about the Tesla bot. Even if you don't consider them, like, the stock price is ridiculously low right now, it's an opportunity to look at the future. And that's why please consider subscribing also to the Tesla Economist. I really like how based you are. You really look at the numbers and you don't try to sugarcoat anything. You're still a bull more or less, but you try to be as neutral as possible. And I really respect also your predictions, and I really like the small details that you always find out. Is very interesting. You count the cars that go out of the factory. I really like that one. It was a gold nugget for me because nobody was talking about that. Go right away to his channel and check it out. But I assume you are all subscribed already to him. Thank you very much, Lee, for being on. Maybe you have something lined up, a video or something that you are passionate about, or maybe you want to tell my audience something that's on your mind for the end of this episode.
Yeah, I'm just trying to work out basically we're at this current run rate now, like a cross section of the current run rate, and you annualize that into numbers and profits and stuff, and then you compare it to the stock price. You've assuming they do sell every car they make, and they get the margins. And okay, there is this little issue in the US where people may be reluctant to buy a car right now because they're about to get a massive saving next month.
Oh yeah,
so
true.
It's just good consumer behavior to it's just
to wait it out.
Yeah, I mean that's rational. So the current cross section of the current profits and the margins, we are now looking at something like a P ratio of about 25 if you annualize it. So, I mean, if you think that's high, if you think that's low, it's up to you. But that's what it is, roughly, I would say. Perspective purposes there.
Yeah.
Evaluation.
You can decide for yourself what you make of this information, of course. Yeah, maybe we will see huge success of Tesla. Maybe we see a year of flatlining, which I don't assume, but we don't have a crystal ball. But if you want to get near a crystal ball, maybe then you have to watch the Tesla Economist, in my opinion. So thank you for being on, Lee, and
Thanks.
All the rest of the audience. I only have to say one last thing now, is to say a goodbye, everybody.
This was Tesla Fix. Make sure to subscribe and like this episode for the tool algorithm. Sorry for my pronunciation, I'm a little drunk. In Vino Veritas.